welcome back to the Paperback Podcast. And today we're going to be talking about Brave New World. Now, I picked this book up in Amsterdam. I went to a bookstore called Waterstones, and when I saw this book, I immediately knew I was going to like it. I read the back and I was like, this is definitely something I'm interested in. So, um, I was like amazed to see all of these like English books because where I live, you can't get a lot of English books. So when I saw this, I was like, I need to get this. I could have spent hours in that library. But yeah, today we're gonna talk about Brave New World. It's a bit different from the other books I've talked about. It's more of a dystopian novel. It's by Aldous Huxley. Christ, that's a weird name. And so, first, I'm just going to summarize what happens in the book. Brave New World is a society that lives in a futuristic, like, time. It's called the World State, and it basically revolves around like science and efficiency, which means that at a very young age, people are brainwashed and conditioned into not really feeling strong emotions and not having any like long lasting relationships because in this society everyone belongs to everyone, right? So at a young age, children are brainwashed and yeah. So at the beginning of the novel, um it's kind of explained how in this world children are made and not born. They're made in like these, what could you call it, incubators, like they're grown basically, you know, and they're divided into different classes: alphas, betas, gammas, ep no, I missed one, deltas and epsilons. So they're divided into these groups and it kind of determines their life, you know. And since there are like long lasting relationships aren't a thing, there are no parents, and the concept of parents is also very strange. I'll get into that later. So the main character is Bernard Marx, and he's in the class of Alpha, which is the highest one. And he kind of feels out of place in this society. He falls in love with a girl called Lenina, but in this society, you don't fall in love, right? So he kind of falls in love with her and he feels out of place. He tells her, I want to feel something like passion. I want to feel something strongly. And because of this behavior, this strange behavior, his boss threatens to send him to an island by himself as a punishment. He threatens him to travel to the Savage Reservation, which is basically where normal people live. Like, they're called savages, but really they're just not like the regular civilized people. They're just kind of like, they live out on this area and they have their own little society and like they do rituals. They're more like how our society is right now. There are parents, there's marriage, there's, you know, children aren't conditioned and brainwashed. There's literature, you know. And so him and Lenina, they travel to this savage reservation. They meet this woman called Linda and her son John, who's referred to as Savage, you know. So Linda is apparently the, like, used to be the wife of Bernard's boss. And so that makes John the director's, like the child of those two. You know, it's a bit confusing and I can't really explain it right now because I didn't sleep last night. But so they meet these two, and Bernard is like, let's bring them back for some reason. So, they meet, they come back, and everyone was like, wow, look at the savages. Like, this is crazy. How you would expect them to react to them, basically. And eventually, something happens. I won't spoil it, but eventually John is like, you know what? Screw this. This place sucks. Like, I hate this. Everyone is so weird. No one wants poetry or love or God or like anything that's like deep. So he's like, gets the hell out of there, you know? And he moves away to a lighthouse. Um, so, in this society, it's very, how do you say, hedonism,
Hedonism.
that it's very hedonism focused. And to sort of explain this, I gotta explain the difference between hedonism and eudaimonia. So hedonism is happiness that comes from the pursuit of pleasure and the avoidance of any sort of discomfort, right? And eudaimonic happiness is isn't oh, it isn't always pleasant, but it's happiness that comes from the pursuit of passion, authenticity, meaning, virtue, all of those things, right? And in this society, eudaimonia is not a thing. It's all very hedonism focused. It's all like try to make everything as hedonic as possible, right? So they don't like they have this drug called soma, which is really just makes you happy all the time, you know? Yeah, everything's just very hedonic. It's insane. Like when I was reading this, I was like, wow. Nobody like what what is this? Like why does everyone just have sex and do drugs? Like it's insane. So, um let me move on to the next one. Okay, so first of all, I want to talk about how love is not ordinary in this like society. So, in Brave New World, nobody gets into relationships. People sort of have each other. Like every time someone had something with another person, they would talk to the people about the people like, "Oh yeah, this girl that I had or the guy that I was having at the time." Like, okay. So they kind of talk about it like that. If you think about it, it's really just hookup culture. Like that's all there is in this book. It's hookup. There's no relationships. It's just that. And that means love is just not a thing, right? Romance is not a thing. There's this huge contrast that you see with John and Lenina. So John the Savage and then the civilized girl Lenina. So John is like totally in love with her and Lenina is like, "Eh? What are you talking about?" You know? So at some point I think it was like I mean, this book may as well be a comedy at this point because when I read this, I was laughing my ass off. Oh my god. Because there's a scene that perfectly just describes like this huge contrast between the two characters. One of them being totally in love with the other and quoting Shakespeare and being like, "I want to be with you forever," and the other one being like, um, "That's just like chill, you know?" Okay, I found it. Um, so John is going on this huge rant and saying like, "Lenina, I would love to just like I would like kill animals like I would kill for you, Lenina, you know?" And at some point he says, "I mean, I'd sweep the floor if you wanted." And Lenina says, "But there's vacuum cleaners here." was crying from laughing at this. Maybe I'm the only one who found that so funny, but I was crying. Like, this entire society is so aromantic. It's insane. So, yeah, that's like one thing you really see. And I really like the fact that Aldous Huxley added this to the book. You can kind of I really like the idea of having a part of society that's still like normal, and then they meet like this like futuristic thing, and you kind of get to see like the contrast. Really, I think he did that very well. um so next up is the fact that passion is a very strange concept, you know. So um at the beginning of the book, Bernard is feeling out of place, and he's not really sure what he's feeling, but he's feeling like he wants to do something more strongly, right? Something that has more meaning. And he tries to tell this to people, but like nobody understands for some reason. And so he talks about wanting to do something that's more meaning, and something that makes him happy and not everyone else happy, you know? And of course, people are confused and people are like, what the hell are you talking about? And you see this a lot in this book because it's not just Bernard that's feeling this way at some point, and I hate the fact, like, I'm kind of confused by what happened with Bernard, because at some point he just turns back to his old ways and just takes Soma and is like happy and normal again, you know? So I really don't understand what happened there, because at some point in the book it's like Bernard doesn't really exist anymore and that he's just like, you know? But we get to see the same thing that happened to Bernard happen to the director, which is Bernard's boss. So the same thing kind of starts happening to the director. His name is Helmholtz. And he also starts to feel like, I want to write something that has like meaning, but what can you write about if there's nothing going on? You know, everyone is happy all the time and there's no pain, there's none of that ever. So, what are you supposed to write about if nothing's happening? So, you kind of get to see these characters that, even though they've been brainwashed and like yeah, they've been brainwashed all their life, there's still this like like a small percent that wants to know what passion is and wants to do something besides these like hedonic activities. So I think that the fact that these characters exist, um and the way that they talk about how they want to be more passionate and talk about how they feel like they need to do something that's more deep. I think the way that Aldous Huxley did that, he did really good, except for Bernard. I don't know what happened there, because really, I mean, if you read the book, you'll understand what I mean. Like, he just disappears at some point. Bernard is gone. Bernard's the main character, and all of a sudden he vanishes out of nowhere. He's just like, well, time to take Soma again and just be happy. Maybe I didn't understand that, but like, seriously, he just like, it's like he disappears. I mean, he comes again at the end, but where did he go? What happened, Bernard? You know, he's supposed to be the main character, the guy who's like feeling out of place in this society, and then oh, all of a sudden, yeah, no, it's gonna be this other guy that feels kind of out of place, and you know what, we're just gonna talk about him now and the savage and just forget about Bernard. Whoops, he gone. Maybe I'm totally wrong about that. Maybe I just did not understand at all what happened there. But I am telling you, it's like the guy just disappears out of nowhere. So, also another like smaller point is the loss of individuality. in this book, in this society, um, in Brave New World, there's no such thing as solitude, you know? Like when Lenina and Bernard were just hanging out by themselves, Lenina was like, "Oh my god, this is awful. Like, can't we just go hang out with everyone else, Bernard? Like, what are we doing here?" Bernard's just like, "I don't know. I just wanted to talk to you here by the water. Jesus Christ." You know, there's like this no individuality. Everyone belongs to everyone. Terrifying, by the way. Jesus Christ, if I had to do that, that'd be insane. So there's like no sense of individuality. Everyone is extremely unified. Like there's no such thing as being an individual anymore. You've been like programmed. Everyone belongs to everyone. So yeah, that's another small thing. But so now I just like to say that the parallel this book was written in, I don't know, hold on. Wow, that actually shocked me. This book was written in 1931. How did this guy predict everything so well? Okay. First of all, the amount of parallels. Oh my god. Okay, first of all, the hookup culture thing is insane. I don't know if you've noticed, but it's also very normal in today's society, you know, like relationships aren't really, I mean, they exist, you know, of course, but it's on its way to hookup culture. Like our society is kind of on its way to hookup culture being preferred over relationships. And that's literally in this book. So my question is, are we living in Brave New World? Because like there's more. Okay. There's these things called feelies. Like you go to a movie theater and they play the movie or whatever, and you kind of like, it's kind of like a VR. Like you can feel everything that's happening in the movie, right? And you can like you feel everything that's happening in the movie. VR is literally the same. Virtual reality, like what? And like also like 3D, 4D, 8D movies or something. This also exists. But another part is propaganda and censorship. So in this book, at a very young age, kids when they're like, well, yeah, kids when they're like sleeping and stuff, they have like these speakers built into their pillows or something, and it just like repeats like everything, like everyone belongs to everyone. Alphas are the best, epsilons bad, you know? I don't know. Like there's a lot of propaganda and brainwashing and stuff. And if you haven't noticed, also happening today. I won't say exactly where because people will, like, I don't know, but I can give you one concrete example: North Korea. And they can't, like, do anything to me. But North Korea, propaganda, brainwashing, all of that. Those people have no idea of the outside world. They're programmed from when they're children, you know. So there's that, but also the separation of classes. So alphas are at the top and epsilons are at the bottom. Epsilons are bred to be like workers, and alphas are, I think they're bred to be leaders. So I mean, you can see that in today's society as well. The working class and like the upper class and like the middle class, whatever. All of that. This is it's insane how much this parallels with our society. So like it's not, yeah, like at the back. Someone said Huxley was uncannily like prophetic, like a prophet. The guy straight up told us everything that was gonna happen. Like, not everything, but it's not like our society is completely far off from everything that's happening in this book, you know? Um, I mean, there's a lot of parallels and stuff. But one thing that isn't really happening today that is happening in this book is that poetry and religion and um anything that's like deep and passion is like forgotten or whatever. And I'm very glad that that hasn't happened, but who knows what will happen in the future. I mean, I'd be much happier if that didn't happen, but other than that, everything in this book could happen to us in our like in the future, like near future, right? I mean, what is life gonna be like without passion? I mean, I know that I would be feeling like Bernard and the director, like there has to be something deeper than just these hedonic experiences, right? Like, there has to be more to life. But I mean, what is our life without passion, without like deep meaning, and without like eudaimonia, you know? What are we supposed to do if we're just living through life trying to feel as comfortable as possible and trying to eliminate any sort of discomfort? Because without like pain and discomfort and all that stuff, how are you supposed to know what true happiness is like and what it and really appreciate feeling happy and being happy and the good experiences in your life? Because without the bad you can't experience the good. Life is all about really experiencing all the aspects, the good and the bad. It's not about happiness, it's kind of about experiencing every aspect of it. But I feel like if we lose that, we also lose passion and wanting to do something passionately and wanting to feel something strongly. I mean, really think about what life would be like if we didn't have all those things. I read the reviews on this book, and one of them like absolutely terrified me. One of them was like 1 stars, and she was basically saying like, yeah, I mean, this is supposed to be like a warning and like scary, but like, I mean, everything in this book sounds great. Oh girl, no, I'm sorry. But if you really think like that, I feel really bad for you because in my opinion, passion is one of the greatest things about life, you know? I mean, sure, really think about it. Um Having to work very few hours and like always having access to like sex and drugs and all of that. I mean, that sounds great for like a couple of hours. And then afterwards, it's just like, well, I'm always comfortable. I'm always happy. There's always like drugs to help me if I'm feeling upset or something. Is that really what you want? Do you really want to live life where you're constantly happy and where you don't even experience an ounce of struggle? Because there's this one quote, okay, hold on. Really, the short term quick happiness does not even compare to true happiness that happens like by overcoming a struggle. And there's this really good quote I would like to read to y'all. I think this has to be like my favorite quote from the book. It's really good. And being contented has none of the glamour of a good fight against misfortune, none of the picturesqueness of a struggle with temptation or a fatal overthrow by passion or doubt. Hap- Happiness is never grand. Now tell me, you would rather have easy access to happiness and always be happy, always be happy, instead of s- like experiencing struggle and misfortune and then being rewarded with happiness. Tell me you would rather have that instant pleasure and happiness over the other option. Because if you're really honest with yourself, if we're not passionate, if we're not like feeling every aspect of life, it doesn't work. We'll always feel like there's going to be something that's missing, you know? So yeah, I mean that's what I think, right? And so would I recommend this book? Yeah, I would. But listen up. Um unless you read Shakespeare on a daily basis and for fun, you're going to have a hard time reading this. This took me over a month to read. Not because it wasn't good, but because the English level is insane. I had to really think about every sentence I just read. Like, the English level is pretty high. Okay, so it took me a while to finish, so I wouldn't recommend this book if you're new to reading. But overall, I would recommend because it's very like thought provoking, and if you like reading dystopian kind of things like 1984 or Animal Farm, then yeah, you should read this, definitely. Absolutely. I think it's something everyone should read. So, overall, if I had to rate it on like a 5-star scale thingy, I would give it like 4 stars. 1 star missing because I still don't understand what happened with Bernard. Um, and I feel like that's just like a plot hole, like you don't really get what happens there. But overall, I think it really, I mean, it's scary to read because it's like our society is basically on the way to becoming this. So it's kind of scary to read. But I feel like, I mean, yeah, that's how it is. Like it might be, honestly, I wasn't that like terrified when I was reading this. I was just kind of like, that's really interesting because in my mind, society is not going to be like this. And I feel like that's going to be the case. But I know that a lot of people might read this and think, wow, like, oh my god, this is definitely gonna happen. But I mean, there's just a chance, pretty big chance, but it doesn't mean that we have to end up like this. We gotta stay positive. And um so yeah, so overall I would recommend the book. um just keep in mind it's hard to read, okay? And sometimes you might not always understand what's going on, but overall I think the plot development in this book is pretty good, and the way the story develops and the way the story ends is kind of shocking. But um I think the ending does make sense, and I think it is a good ending. I won't tell you what the ending is, but it is a good ending, and I think if I was Aldous Huxley, I would have ended it the same way. Because there's no like ultimate, oh, Brave New World fixes its society and it goes back to being normal. No, it doesn't end like that. And I think it would have been a bad book if it ended like that. um so overall I would recommend it. I was really invested in this book, and I was really looking forward to reading it, and it did not disappoint. So, yeah, I would recommend it. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the podcast, and I will see you next time.